My name is Ebert Wolf. I'm head of architecture at SwagLab. I have a lot of experience in software architecture. I'm a trainer. I do talks at conferences. I have a blog. I also stream about software architecture. I'm an ISAQB member. So I have a lot of experience, in particular concerning flexible systems, microservices. I originally came up with the module and the content of the module. Nowadays, I'm just helping the curators to deal with the module and to improve it. Actually, the curators are Alexander Heusingfeld, Mike Schwerber and Falk Zipper, so I'm helping them to update it and to keep it up to introduce new ideas. So the reason why there is a group of curators and why I help them is to get different perspective in their different experiences. And at the end of the day, the ISAQB is meant to be something that involves different trainers and different organizations. So this is why we have this group of people dealing with that module. The flexible architecture training provides a holistic view on flexible architectures. It involves parts of domain-driven design, different approaches like microservices, but also monolith. And to get that holistic understanding about this topic, this very fundamental quality of software architecture, this is the training that you want to join. And that is the reason why I would encourage you to join it. It originally started as a module that talks about microservices, self-contained systems, this by then new ideas about architecture. Obviously, microservices are just one step towards more flexible architecture. So nowadays, it's probably a module that is founded on the problems that we have with microservices that microservices didn't really solve. So we are talking about other ways to do flexible architectures. So we talk about modulith, we talk about monolith, and in particular, we talk about how to come up with a good split of the domain logic into different modules. So it's a rather holistic approach about flexible architecture, and it involves all the lessons learned from the work out there in practice with architectures and more recent architecture approaches. In particular, it's about flexible architectures, and I think the flexibility of an architecture is pretty important because at the end of the day, software is meant to change all the time. So if you have a flexible system, it's a lot more valuable than a non-flexible system. So that is why this module is quite important and the topic is very important. Most important about that is probably the split of the domain logic. So how do you split your systems apart? And when I do my training, it turns out that we really have a lack of understanding how we should do that. Even though it's a very common question, there is no body of knowledge that clearly expresses how this is done. And this is where most of the attendees, in my trainings at least, get a lot of new ideas, a better understanding how to do that. The other topic is the technical flexibility. So if you have a microservices system, each part of the system can have a completely different technology stack. So that's a lot more flexible in terms of technologies. Question obviously is whether it's worth it, because it also has a lot of overhead of additional technical things that you have to implement, like Kubernetes and so on. So that's the other part, but that part is probably more, let's say, more obvious, because nowadays everyone knows that even though microservices provide some flexibility, it's not the silver bullet that just solves all the problems, and also it comes with a cost. So I think that's how this module gives an idea about flexibility. If you do this kind of architecture, if you care about flexible architecture, it depends a lot on the domain logic as well. So I think people who are not really familiar with technical details can still participate because it's also about domain logic and how to split that apart, and that has huge consequences. For example, if you have a coarse-grained split of your system, that also influences how teams work and what the goal of or the mission of a team is. Product owners, people who are not really familiar with technical details, they can still participate. People who are software engineers who probably are more into technical details can also, in my opinion, participate, because architecture is something that involves all the roles. Sort of the original role that would participate in this training is obviously software architects, but I think you have to have a much broader audience to really come to a flexible architecture. I think to have non-technical people join is a good idea anyways, because software architecture is something that goes across different roles. So I would encourage them to join. It might be that they don't really get some of the technical details, but that doesn't really matter. The sort of lack of understanding that some people have concerning software architecture is a problem, because if you decide what teams do, that seems to be something that is more project management than architecture, but really it's about architecture. So therefore, to understand software architecture and the fundamentals that we teach about flexible systems is a good idea also if you want to give a mission to a team, if you care about deadlines and organization and so on, because it gives you the idea what they actually produce and how that works and how it should work. And that lack of knowledge how software architecture and software development works is, in my opinion, often a problem that management has. So therefore, it's also something that those people can do. AI and LLMs don't really play such a huge role in these modules. At the end of the day, these are the problems that we are facing, like how to come up with a flexible architecture, are fundamental architecture problems. Now, you can have an LLM or some AI to help you making software architecture decisions, but there are other things that help you too, like a good book, some talk at a conference, or a web search. And I think this is where AIs and LLMs fit into this architecture process that we are talking about. Software architecture at the end of the day is a people business. We just talked about the different roles who are involved in this process. And I think this is actually a core problem. And therefore, to solve that problem, common understanding is needed. And that is something that LLMs and AI won't help us with.